I almost feel like wearing pants. It's almost fall. A little chill is in the air in the morning when I take my daily walk, and it's almost time for the shorts to go into the drawer and for my jeans to shake that closet dust off. That means perfect brewing weather is coming soon. Get ready by paying a visit to the Build Your Own Beer page on HighGravityBrew.com. It's become my go-to place for putting together the ingredients for the recipes that we develop on this show. HighGravityBrew.com has everything you need to brew delicious beer, including proven kits if you want to let Desiree and Dave design your beers for you. And you can take the pain out of propane with excellent electric brewing systems and controllers. Use the code EBC75BB to save $75 off your Warthog electric purchase. That's at family-owned and operated HighGravityBrew.com. That's HighGravityBrew.com. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, September 21st, 2023. I'm James Spencer. Here at Basic Brewing Radio, we're all about home brewing. This week, Chris Colby of BeerAndGardeningJournal.com and I get together to formulate a listener-suggested lager, a smoked Rotbier Red Lager from Nuremberg. If you want to support us financially, check out patreon.com/basicbrewing. Thanks to everybody who's helping out in that way. If you go to patreon.com/basicbrewing, you can see a long list of stuff that you can access if you sign up as a supporter. Financial supporters have already seen the early release of our video episode on Steve's hot dog beer. That was a lot of fun. And financial subscribers have also already seen the behind-the-scenes video of Steve brewing the base beer for his hot dog beer on my patio, along with seeing Steve's face as he tries Chicago-based and controversial favorite Malort for the first time. It's a liquor that's heavy on the botanicals. Strangely, I was able to find a bottle of Malort at a Fayetteville liquor store. I called ahead of time to see if they had Malort, and the owner at first said no, and that he'd never heard of it, and then he looked it up on his computer and found a couple of cases hidden in the back. Probably a lifetime supply of Malort around here. Personally, I don't think it's as horrible as its reputation indicates. I'm not saying that it's good for me, but, you know. Susan and I bottled the 21st iteration of the hop sampler yesterday. The samples going into the bottle tasted really good. And I don't know how successful Steve and I will be in telling them apart. It's been so long since we've done a hop sampler, but I think they'll be great beers. We'll be comparing Nectaron, Idaho 7, and Vic Secret. That Vic Secret was over 20% alpha acid. However, as usual, I added each variety proportionally, so theoretically they should have similar IBU levels going into the beer. Speaking of Susan and I will be taking a vacation the first week of October, so I won't be posting a show that week. If all goes to plan, we'll be back in time to post the second week in October. It's the first trip that we'll be taking just the two of us since we've had kids, so I may be left on the roadside somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. Wish me luck. I'm really looking forward to brewing the beer from this week's show, this week's recipe. I'm going to ferment it with the new seasonal yeast from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Yeast. L26 Pilgrimage is shipping now. Pilgrimage produces a clean fermentation and accentuates malt profile to create balanced and nuanced lagers. That'll be especially useful in this smoked Rotbier because you don't want any yeast character to mingle with that smoked malt, or at least I don't in this case. This will be a small batch, so I'm not going to make a starter. Those 200 billion cells in each easy-to-open pack of Imperial yeast will do just fine, I predict, so my stir plate will remain dusty. Head into fall with your own delicious lager. Ask your local homebrew store about L26 Pilgrimage from our friends and sponsors at Imperial Yeast. And as always, check them out at imperialyeast.com. It's imperialyeast.com. Okay, I hadn't heard of Rotbier before, so I asked Chris Colby to look into it, and as always, he did not disappoint and found out a lot about this really fun-sounding style. Chris Colby, welcome back to Basic Brewing Radio.
Hey, James. Thanks for having me on the show.
We're going to talk about a beer style that up until very recently, like a few days ago, I don't think that I had heard of, and I'm very excited about that. But first of all, we're going to taste a beer style that we're very familiar with, and this is kind of a throwback to the early days of homebrew, at least for me. And this is the porter that you and I formulated on a past episode of this show. So we get to formulate the recipe, we get to brew the recipe, we get to taste the recipe, and then, see how we did. So in front of you, you have my version of essentially your porter. You kind of led the way through the thing. So what do you think?
It's good. It was a keg pour. It's a little low on carbonation, but not critically. There's foam. Smells good. You can really get the aroma. That can be a problem sometimes in dark beers, especially if you get the water chemistry wrong. If you don't have enough carbonates to knock the pH up a little bit, or actually not allow it to get down to where it would with the darker grains, it sometimes it's like sort of acidic tasting, and the aroma is really closed off. But this is if you put your nose in the glass, you really smell the roast malts, like chocolate and whatnot.
Yeah, to me, it's very chocolatey, and I think the bitterness is well balanced. It's got a really good mouthfeel. I think it's a really, really satisfying yet sessionable beer.
What were the IBUs on this?
I can't remember what the IBUs were, but maybe in the 30s or does that sound?
That sounds about right.
Familiar. I need to start writing stuff like that down. Here's the recipe. Do you want to hear the recipe?
Yeah.
It's a 5-gallon or 19-liter batch. We started with 8 pounds or 3.6 kilograms of Maris Otter, 1 pound or 450 grams of 60 Lovibond caramel malt, 8 ounces or 227 grams of black malt or black patent, 5 ounces or 142 grams of chocolate malt, 3 ounces or 85 grams of roasted barley. And I mashed for 150 degrees Fahrenheit, or at 150 degrees Fahrenheit, 65 C for 90 minutes. And I actually put chemicals in there this time. Based on what my brewing software recommended, I used 2.21 grams of calcium chloride, 4.11 grams of Epsom salt, and 2.21 grams of gypsum. And I was going to send you my water profile from Ward Labs so that you could put it in your brewing software, but I forgot. But we started out the 60-minute boil with 3 ounces or 85 grams of Czech Sats, and I was going to just do 2, but these were at 2.2% alpha acid, so extremely low, so I bumped it up to 3 ounces. And then at flame out, this is the one where we used 1 ounce or 28 grams of the Huel melon at 6.2% alpha acid. And then it was A09 Pub from Imperial, starting gravity 1046, final gravity 1011 for an ABV of 4.6% and allegedly 156 calories. So I don't get much of the fruitiness from the Huel melon, I don't think.
That's not knocking me over. No, I wouldn't have guessed that. It was 5 ounces of chocolate and 3 ounces of roasted barley.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's half a pound of the dark malts, so the kind that smell like black patent doesn't really have much aroma. So that makes sense.
Yeah, the theory was a pound of 60 Lovibond crystal malt, and then another pound of the darker malt. So 8 ounces of black malt,
right? And
then plus 5 ounces of chocolate, and then plus 3 ounces of roasted barley. That's those together are a pound.
Yeah.
So I pitched it. By the way, I pitched it 68 degrees Fahrenheit or 20 C.
Okay.
But Pub got done with it in a hurry, and it flocculated out like a rock. The pub is
Nice.
pub is you really it doesn't just pour into the fermenter from the pouch. You kind of have to squeeze it out. It's kind of like clay. It's so flocculent and thick. So it's a good beer to keg. With that, with a really highly flocculent English yeast in the past, especially with higher gravity beers, when bottle conditioning, I've had to go back and reprime, the bottles with a little bit of dried yeast or something to because I waited too long, to bottle it or whatever, and then all the yeast was down in the bottom. Nothing was in, not much was in suspension to help with the carbonation of the beer. But I'm really happy with it. Is it pretty much what you were expecting, or how is it different from your porters past?
It's very similar. I mean, it's my water has a lot of carbonates in it, so there's the aroma when I brew it at my house is maybe a little bit more. And I mean, I switch the recipe, up every time I do it. Also, I generally I can't remember. I usually go a little bit more hoppy. So there's a little bit more. Trying to think what a word is here.
Bite.
Yeah, just the overall balance. There's the way I brew it. That sometimes it's a little more. There's a little bit more bitterness and astringency from the dark grains, and then there's a little more hops. But it's it's pretty much ballpark the same as mine. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So because it was pretty much ballpark the same recipe. So
I like it. I think I kind of like the fact that it's kind of more on the malty side. Then it's got plenty of bitterness to to kind of cleanse the palate at the end.
Yeah, it's not sickeningly sweet.
Right. It's not syrupy in my opinion.
It's actually very like it's more drinkable than my stout or not my porter. Like mine's a little bit. I think 'cause I also go a little bit higher alcohol, usually like 5.2. And so, but this would be a great like after gardening beer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think.
Yeah, very very smooth. Very drinkable.
Smooth.
Smooth.
Maybe no offense, but maybe the laziest beer descriptor.
Yeah, I know.
But sometimes it works.
Yeah, smooth as opposed to rough. Like, what would that even mean? Got grains of sand inside the beer, so when you taste it, it rasps your throat.
I get a little bit of ground glass.
Yeah.
Oh, that's because I dropped yours on the way.
Yeah.
And your lip's bleeding.
Yeah.
My mouth's bleeding, Bert. My mouth's bleeding. Well, good. I continue to be relieved. Each time I send out a homebrew to you and Matt, and I sent some to Adam Ross up at Twinspan, and I continue to be relieved when you guys are nice enough to say that they don't suck. So,
well, they don't. And I mean, you maybe brewing for however many years you've been brewing has let you be good at it. I'm just spitballing here. Maybe if you've made literally hundreds of batches of beer, you got the hang of it by now.
Yeah, it's not quite the Malcolm Gladwell. Is he the guy that's the 10,000 hours or whatever? I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think I've done 10,000 hours, but I might have drunk 10,000 beers. I don't know.
Yeah.
So good. Yay.
Huzzah!
Huzzah! Well, this new beer this week is inspired by a listener email in an ad for Imperial's L26 pilgrimage. I said, there's lager season coming up. I don't have much experience with, or lagers and generally not my thing. Give me a suggestion of what lager I should brew. So got this email from Mike from Indianapolis, who said, I just listened to your most recent episode, the California Common episode, and you call out for lager suggestions. Perked up my ears. It's currently carbonating, but I just brewed up a German Rotbier / Nuremberg Red Beer. I've never had one, but it looks to be the prominent style in the city of Nuremberg and hard to find outside of the region. Even looking around for recipes has proven to be challenging. The gist is it sounds like a lagered red ale / amber, more or less. And then he sent some links of, like there's a YouTube video and some articles that Mike found. But he said, I wanted to toss this style in as a suggestion for the future. Well, the future is here. He said, I made it because it seems like a great transitional beer from summer into fall, and it feels largely forgotten outside of Franconia. So thanks for the email, Mike. I appreciate that. And so have you heard of or had a Rotbier, Chris?
I've never had one. And I, like you, I don't know if I have even heard of it. I mean, Rot in Germany is just red, and beer is beer, of course. So, it. If I'd heard of it before, I probably just thought that it was a descriptor, But apparently, it's quote unquote a thing in currently in Nuremberg, which is in Franconia in Germany, which is Franconia is a region that encompasses Bavaria and some other places that speak the Frankish dialect. And apparently, there was that YouTube video the guy had sent, and I googled around and did some other. And there's not a ton of the written about it, but basically it was I guess it started as sort of a red ale, but then became a lager. It was brewed in Nuremberg and was popular, maybe starting as early as the 1300s, but then it sort of more modern beers that took, I guess, the actual like old school Rot beers took a lot of work to do, and they got crowded out by newer, more modern beers that were less work. According to Schlenkerla, the brewery, they're in Bamberg. The style was revived in 1997, although there's a brewery in Nuremberg that claims that they started in the 1980s, so who knows. But anyway, it's a beer that's red in color. It's sometimes unfiltered. It has white foam. It's a Swedish kind of beer, not Swedish, but sweet.
Sweetish.
Yeah, sweet. A sweet beer with not a lot of hops. They're not absent, but it's it's very similar to a wheat beer. They're pretty much IBUs match right up. It's like just not it's not a hoppy beer. And when people describe it, like online, the descriptions, different words include like toffee, prunes, honey, red berries, whatever red berries are. And those are, a lot of times when a beer is heavy on caramel malts, people use those sort of descriptions. Toffee obviously is caramel and milk. And anyway, the beer is, most of them, there's like 5 breweries doing it in Nuremberg right now, and the beers all sit around 5% ABV, 20 to 30 IBUs. Interestingly enough, some of them can be carbonated up to like 2.8 volumes of CO2, which is the normal American Pilsner or American craft ale is usually 2.5 or 2.6 volumes of CO2. So a little bit higher, not ludicrously high though. Hefeweizens get up to like 5 volumes of CO2, and champagne is like 6. And anyway, also one reason that piqued my interest was that the Schlenkerla brewery, which is in Bamberg, which is in Franconia, they just released a smoked Rot beer. They just call it smoked red lager, or Weichel red lager. Weichel has some term comes from the region. And anyway, it's a Rot beer that's or a Rotbier that's smoked with cherry wood. Schlenkerla usually uses beech in their Marzen, which is their sort of flagship smoked beer. And yeah, so anyway, apparently it's a style that came and went, but then now it's back to some degree.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun. It sounds delicious, especially for fall. Now we've kind of gone on in this recipe development series. Matt and I, we came up with an amber ale together, and then a red IPA together, and then you and I, just did this porter. And I feel like we're dangerously close to getting into a brownish rut, but which you don't look that up.
Yeah, do not Google that term.
unless you want to. But but I think this would be interesting, and especially since you, to me, just a rot beer, and I hesitate to do the affect. It becomes an affectation. The rot beer, just plain, sounds kind of like an amber lager, which we did an amber ale already. So you're saying that Schlenkerla did a smoked version. That piqued my interest. I was like, "Oh, that sounds fun." It's been a while since I've done a smoked beer, and I know that you famously are a fan of the smoked beer.
Hmm. Yeah, I've got no hope of finding this beer in Texas, but my wife's living in Boston right now, and I've told her, keep an eye out. So hopefully, because she goes to good beer stores, and hopefully she'll also find some.
Yeah. And also, you were able to Google around, and you actually found a recipe for Rotbier from Weyermann. So, we actually, this could be the end of the show. We'll just read this recipe out and just make it be done. But, that's cheating. But what's Weyermann's take on it?
Yeah, Weyermann, which is of course the malting company, and they're in Bamberg, which is in Franconia. So they, you would think they would have a pretty good grasp on what this is. They have a recipe that's very interesting. It's like really quirky, I think. It's basically they start with 32% Pilsner malt and 31% Vienna, so 2/3, Pilsner Vienna base malt. Then the next most abundant malt is Cara Red, which is like a caramel malt around 20 degrees Lovibond, and it's 20%, which is like twice as much as every American homebrewing thing you read is like caramel malts top them off at 10%. So this is 20% caramel 20, the malt that Weyermann calls Cara Red, and then there's another 9% Cara Munich. Okay, which is not a Munich malt; it's a caramel malt, and this one's around 35 Lovibond. So that's about 30%. That's almost a third of the beer is crystal malt or caramel malt probably. I don't know how Myra makes those, but they could be crystal as well as caramel malt. And then on top of that, there's 8% melanoidin, which is again it's a malt where a lot of people say top it off at 5%, and that's like a Munich style malt, except it's at 30 degrees Lovibond. It's darker. So lots of color malts in there, and lots of, you would expect that to be a very thick, syrupy, sweet beer. And in fact, there some in that video, the guy, he said, some people mentioned that it's just too sweet for them. So, and looking at the recipe, you can see why. And then it's like 25 IBUs. The Weyermann recipe is they use Perla for bittering and Hallertau Mittelfrüh just a little bit for actually about an ounce in the last 10 minutes for aroma hops. But then an interesting thing is they do a step mash. So they step from 145, rest it for 45 minutes there, and then go up to 154 for 20 minutes and then mash out, which is kind of weird. Because usually you think of a step mash as something that when you're trying to develop a highly fermentable malt, or I'm sorry, highly fermentable wort, and then But if you want doing that, why load it up with so many caramel malt? But maybe it is to at least partially knock that down as much as possible.
Yes.
And the specs they give for it is with an OG of 1058 for a 5% ABV beer. So that if you go do the calculation, that must mean that the final gravity is 1020, 1.020, which is hot.
Wow.
Yeah, when you consider a pale ale, that's 5% generally finishes around 1012.
Yeah, usually.
This porter was 1011.
Usually something like a Scottish ale. There's some big beer you'd expect to finish out at 1020. But this is a sessionable beer that's it's.
Yeah, so this is.
Yeah. It's almost like almost wort.
Yeah, that would be very a very thick, very sweet beer, and then with not a lot of hops to cut through that.
Mm-hmm.
But they do, at least some breweries carbonate it fairly highly, so that's gonna cut into the sweetness and stickiness a little bit, although not completely. So that's an interesting recipe. And if someone were fixated on the idea of brewing a very traditional, although I guess there's some discussion in Nuremberg about what beers can and can't be labeled, this, and part of it is that the one really traditionalist brewery that brewed it there, they have like caves underneath their brewery, and they lager the beer in barrels in these cold caves or whatever. So you can't, unless you have a cold cave under your house, you can't 100% traditionally brew this beer.
I got a basement.
Yeah, there you go.
It's not cold right now, but in the wintertime it would be.
But then other places do it more modern, like Tucher, which is a fairly big German brewery. They have a Rotbier.
So I want to brew a 2-gallon batch of this for a couple reasons. Number one, my kegerator's full. I've got two 5-gallon batches. I got the porter and I got this California Common in there already. And also, smoked beer is not something that, I like it, but it's not generally something that I would want to have like more than one, in an evening. So like maybe a half batch or a 2-gallon batch, which is less than a half batch, like a 2-gallon batch, I think would be something more along the lines of something I want to do on this. Also, it's, this is going to be kind of an experiment because we've never done this style before. And it could be that I don't like it.
Yeah.
It could be that you'll be getting more than 4 of of the beer.
Nice.
You like smoked beer? You like this? Here, I'll drive it down. No. So let's. Have you got your spreadsheet open? Let's start working.
I do indeed.
Here. And again, we don't want to cheat and just duplicate the Wireman recipe. Plus, they don't have smoked malts, so it'd be interesting to see how we bring that in. Let's start off with a 2-gallon batch.
One thing I would say is, like, if we want to do a nod to the historical style, we're going to want a decent amount of crystal malt in there, but maybe not a third of the batch. That's outrageous. We'll take care of the excessive sweetness problem in the grist, not by doing a step mash, unless we want to.
Okay, no.
Yeah, so with the smoked beer, what would you'd want to start off with? Here's the big surprise: smoked malt. Okay, and that's smoked malt is usually at least roughly the same color as pale ale malt or pale malt or pilsner malt or whatever.
You have done, and I have done as well. 100% smoked malt beers.
Yeah,
which are intense sometimes, depending on the Sugar Creek Malting Company. Their smoked malt was really enjoyable. It wasn't like licking an ashtray, is my comparison. But I looked on High Gravity's website, and they have Wireman smoked malt, which I guess would be what? Would that be a beechwood or something?
That's beach. Yeah, I'm
probably
pretty sure.
a neutral. And then they also have Reese cherry smoked malt.
Yeah, the Schlenkerla is cherry smoked.
Right. And then they
So
have
if you wanted to take that as the lead,
Simpson's peated
yeah, no,
smoked
that's
malt.
not going to be what you want.
So is the cherry smoked malt, is that going to like add to the sweetness? Is that going to be too much, or should we just go for it?
I think it's just the difference between cherry smoke and beech smoke. That it's a character thing, not a sweetness. It's not going to add any cherry flavor like what we think of like when eating the fruit.
Right,
but I mean you can do either.
Comparing, say, cherry with, like hickory or mesquite,
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a sweeter characteristic. And it's
I'd say I'm on par with hickory. Mesquite's a little bit rougher.
Yeah, I don't like mesquite.
Oh, I love mesquite.
But I put beans in my chili.
Yeah, mesquite is a little bit like oak. I mean, which is great for brisket, but like on more delicate flavored things, it's not as good. Yeah, I don't know. I'd go with cherry, but
okay, yeah,
you're brewing it.
No, let's go for it.
Okay,
might as well.
Okay, so for a 2-gallon batch, let's just for now, say 3 pounds of smoked malt.
Okay.
Okay, and that puts us at we can fix it later, but that puts us at an OG of 1043 to start off, and we're going to be higher than that.
And the smoked malt has enough diastatic power to get the job done.
Yeah, it's a base malt. It's the way they smoke it, it's the smoke gets on at a fairly low temperature, so it doesn't burn out the enzymes.
Okay.
Okay, and then we can come back. We might want to put some like Munich 2 in there. Dark Munich, something up around 20 Lovibond, but let's work on the crystal malts first.
Okay.
I think a blend of like 20 and 30 degree Lovibond would be good to shoot for that red color. And if you want to get Cara Red by Wireman, that's the red malt.
Yeah, and High Gravity has it.
Okay. If we went with a 1/4 pound of crystal malt in the 20 degree Lovibond range, and crystal malt in the 30 degree Lovibond, or if we wanted to steal from the Wireman and do Cara Red and Cara Munich Type 1. Anyway, a 1/4 pound of each of those ends up being like 14% of the grist is caramel malt, as opposed to 30.
Mm.
So it's half that, but still, most people say don't exceed 10. So it's going to be a little sweeter than normal, but not egregiously so. And then, we've still got a little ways to go on gravity. We could either add more pale malt. Let's add some Munich, though.
What about the melanoidin?
Yeah, we could go with that. Melanoidin is sort of it's the same thing essentially as aromatic malt, or I think of it as like super Munich, because it adds sort of very toasty.
And some people use it to mimic a decoction. Isn't that what they use?
Supposedly, I don't really think that works per se. But that's how some people go about it. What if we went with a 1/3 pound of dark Munich, something in 20 degree Lovibond range, or like what would that in Wireman? It would be Munich 2. Okay, and that brings us to 1054, which if it all ferments out is about 5.2.
Yeah.
ABV. We figure it won't though at 15%. It goes down to that. Let's just say it. Okay, well if it ends at 10-15, which it might, that gives us a 5 on the nose.
Mm. So
And
read me the grain bill once again from the top.
okay. Well, we also got one other option.
Oh,
If we wanted to juke the color a bit, because we've got an SRM of 14 right now, which is a little low. Not horrifically so. But, and also that if we wanted to manipulate the hue a little bit, we could take something like 3 ounces of, well, the 3 ounces in a 5-gallon batch. So like at most 2, like maybe 1.5 ounces of like a dehusked or a debittered black malt, and add that to that, and that would add just color. Basically, there would be no aroma, there would be no no flavor,
a black
really.
Prince, something like that.
Something like that. Any of the dehusked, like or just regular black malt would work, but the dehusked would be just a little bit better. So let me try. I'll just enter it as black patent malt. Yeah, just 1.5 ounces of black patent malt. Yeah, your homebrew shop's gonna love you. Oh,
yeah. I think
thanks.
I think we got to keep it to whole ounces.
Yeah, order it from a whole ounce, but we'll only need 1.5 ounces per 2. Is that 2?
Let's bump it up to 2. I mean, they're all going to mix it together and mill it for me. So
okay, let's go with an ounce. That brings us up to about 24, which is a dark. That's sort of into the browns, but I think it'll look good with the Caras. Okay, so the 2-gallon recipe is starts at 1054, ends at 1015 for 5.0% alcohol, which is right on. And the 2-gallon recipe would be 3 pounds of pale malt, smoked pale malt. It would be a 1/4 pound Cara Red, a 1/4 pound Cara Munich Type 1. It would be a 1/3 of a pound, which is like 5.5 ounces roughly, of Munich malt, and the darker type.
20 is that 20 Lovibond Munich?
Munich Type 2. And then just 1 ounce of black patent malt, dehusked if you can find it. And for 2 gallons, like I said, that brings us to 1054 IBUs. Yeah, what do we want for hops?
Well, let's see. They have German Northern Brewer, which the packet I got most recently was 7.5% ABV or alpha acid. I get
right.
too many numbers. So what would like half an ounce?
About 1/3 of an ounce. If it's 7.5, 1/3 of an ounce would put you at 23.
Okay.
22 or 23. Or hang on, let's see. If we went to a half ounce, what would that do? Half ounce puts us over 30, like 35. That's a little bit too much. Yeah, so like 1/3 of an ounce.
Okay.
9 1/3 grams.
And then how should we do some finishing hops as well?
Yeah. Maybe with just 5 minutes left, put in a 1/4 ounce. And that bumps the IBUs up almost nothing, which is what we wanted.
And then and then I'm going to do Eben from Imperial is going to send me some L26 Pilgrimage, which they are, even as we speak, I think maybe, or this week, they're going to be packaging that up. So I'll have
so with the
nice...
the 2-gallon batch, you won't have to make a starter.
Yep.
It'll be just bloop.
Yep. And I'm thinking, since my kegerator's full, what I'm going to do to lager is I'm going to take kind of a low-tech approach and put some water in my keg cooler, and I've got these reusable ice packs that I can, I've got a temperature probe that I can put down in the water surrounding the fermenter, and I can, trade those ice packs out, to kind of maintain, a lower temperature around that. I've never done that before, never done it that, uncontrolled, although it is going to be controlled.
Somewhat controlled, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that'll be good enough to, to get it down to where, I'm not going to be getting crazy fruity off flavors. Although, it's a smoked beer, so it's going to, that would mask it.
A little bit, yeah.
So I think I can get away with
And
that.
if you aerate really well, that'll help. And then if you, the pitching rate is high, that'll also help.
Yep, I've got an oxygen tank and an oxygen stone, so I can do that as well. So, what are we missing? Anything? I mean, no dry hopping, obviously. Chemicals. What profile should I use on my my chemical thing on my software?
Anything for a reddish beer is going to be perfect. You shouldn't need, you shouldn't need a ton of carbonates is helpful in a dark beer. And you don't need, really like super soft water either, which is sometimes helpful in a very light colored beer. Very very low amount of minerals with just basically calcium is dominating the profile for the lightest beers. This is a like middle of the road water. I would put, depending on how much calcium your water has, just bump it up into the 150 to 150 parts per million range, and that should be fine.
Well, cool. This sounds like a fun one.
Yeah.
I'm glad that Mike from Indianapolis wrote in, and I'll be interested to see how this turns out. It's not exactly what he suggested, but we took it as an inspiration to, have a little fun with it. And
sure,
this will be a fun, sitting around a fire pit in the fall, outside with a smoked beer. I think, with some barbecue.
Yeah,
it's right up my alley. I'm getting hungry and thirsty, and I'm done with my beer. So it's time to hit the stop button so I can get more beer.
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, Chris Colby of beerandgardeningjournal.com. You posted on the Facebook that it's getting a little cooler, So it's time to start planning your fall garden. Are you going to be posting on beerandgardeningjournal.com about your fall garden?
Oh yeah, I'm going to. The temperature is cooled way off. It's it was over 100, 105, and now it's 90 something. So which is 100, that's 3 digits, but 90 is only 2 digits. So it's like 2/3 is cooler is how I figure it, because I'm horrible at arithmetic. But no, yeah, I'm gonna plant like a bunch of, I think mainly sort of brassica vegetables. I'm going to get some cabbage, some Chinese cabbage, some Brussels sprouts, things like that. I might plant some beans. I like beans.
Your thing about the 3 digits, it reminds me when I first became a professional journalist. I would joke to people that I was making 6 figures. But I was also counting the figures to the right of the decimal point. So,
yeah. Yeah.
So there you go. All right, Chris Colby. Dr. Chris Colby, I appreciate it again. It's always fun to get together, and I look forward to sharing this beer with you as well.
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, thanks again to Chris. A smoked lager sounds great as the weather gets chilly around here. Smoked beer with some smoked meat, maybe, around a smoky fire pit? Yum. If you have brewing questions, show suggestions, or just want to say howdy, write to James at basicbrewing.com or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And please don't forget to tell us where you're from. Check out our mobile-friendly shop at basicbrewingshop.com. Thanks to everybody supporting us through our Patreon page. Special goodies coming your way. Check that out at patreon.com/basicbrewing. That's all until next time. Until then, thanks for listening, everybody. I'm James Spencer. Production help for Basic Brewing Radio and our website is provided by Kelly Dodson. Basic Brewing Radio is a production of Active Voicing. We'll talk to you next time, everybody. In the meantime, stay well and stay tuned. So long.